So today let's talk about something that's becoming more and more relevant, especially this year. And that is Gen Z's conflicting relationship with wealth. We see Gen Z calling out billionaires, roasting corporate greed, and they're also canceling influencers that flex their wealth. But at the same time, they're also grinding harder than any other generation before them. They're starting side hustles, they're flipping products, and they're also chasing financial freedom like their life depends on it. And low-key, it kind of does. Because while the 1% is getting richer every single year, the rest of us are kind of just stuck dealing with low wages, rising rent, and an economy that's been feeling pretty much impossible to survive in. We also saw how in 2021, the world's billionaires saw their wealth increase by $3.9 trillion during a global pandemic that left millions unemployed. And in 2022, we saw inflation squeeze household budgets worldwide. And while that was happening, America's top CEOs received an average pay increase of 9.2%. And now in 2025, the 5 largest tech companies accounted for around 28% of the S&P 500's total value. So essentially, this isn't just about wealth inequality, it's the emergence of a modern day oligarchy. I'm sure we've all heard of it.
Today, an oligarchy is taking shape in America of extreme wealth, power, and influence that literally threatens our entire democracy, our basic rights and freedoms, and a fair shot for everyone to get ahead.
And this is where economic power translates directly to political influence, media control, and even the ability to sort of shape society itself. So let's talk about it. What's up, YouTube? It's tinysey, and welcome to my digital garden. The evidence of an oligarchy is getting hard to ignore. According to the Federal Reserve, the wealth gap between the top 0.1% and the bottom 50% has reached its widest gap since the Gilded Age. And this was essentially a time from the 1800s to the 1900s where economic growth for the wealthy was booming, but for the working class, they were essentially experiencing extreme poverty. Not a time we would like to go back to. We're also seeing how some corporations are merging into giant monopolies. I mean, T-Mobile and Sprint joined forces, and Google has gotten numerous accusations of being a monopoly. We saw the 2025 election become funded by super wealthy donors like Elon Musk, and wages have been stagnant for decades, even though profits are skyrocketing. So this concentration creates what political scientists are calling democracy capture. And that is where money controls policies, politics, and even public opinion, which leads to policies that benefit the wealthy at the expense of us regular people. But this is where things get a bit interesting for me. Gen Z is seeing this happen in real time. Unlike the older generations that grew up believing in the American dream, Gen Z is the first generation to recognize that this isn't necessarily real. The system is rigged. And previous generations might have aspired to join the 1%. But according to a Gallup research study, Gen Z holds the most negative view of capitalism in comparison to any living generation. They're more likely to support wealth taxes, labor organizing, and economic reforms. All great things. And online, we often see this as the eat the rich sentiment, and we see this literally everywhere. There's a lot of anti-capitalism content that I see, and it gets quite a bit of traction. It's not a fringe idea anymore. It's pretty mainstream, especially within Gen Z's culture. I think in theory, Gen Z could be the generation that changes things through their voting power, their consumer choices, or even how they decide to participate in the workforce. But that is kind of where things get a little bit more complicated, and there's some nuance there. Despite the fact that Gen Z has a clear rejection of wealth inequality, we also see that their behaviors often tell a bit of a complicated and nuanced story. And at first glance, it seems to have some contradictions, but ultimately I think that it reveals the power of the system that they're trying to criticize. Gen Z's really embraced hustle culture, as we like to call it. And according to a 2022 Zapier report that I saw, 59% of Gen Z maintains at least one side hustle, and that is in comparison to 35% of Gen X. Throughout the years, we've really seen the rise of platforms like Etsy, Depop, Fiverr, even OnlyFans, and this has created an ecosystem where multiple income streams are extremely normalized and feasible. And what it's showing us is that having one job just is not enough, which, if you think about it long enough, is very depressing. As you scroll through social media, you're bound to bump into at least one sort of hustle talk, multiple streams of income, passive income type of content. Hustle culture has really become more of an identity, and making money is a sign of status. Having multiple streams of income is a flex to a lot of people, and not grinding is something that I find is looked down upon. I mean, they already have this sort of image of being lazy, but I think that the evidence would prove otherwise. These are people that have multiple jobs, 59% of them. And of course, this hustle and grind mentality is not unique to Gen Z. We've seen previous generations especially take on this sort of mentality, but I will say that Gen Z has taken it to new heights. I don't think everyone had two jobs, but now it's definitely becoming the norm. Now, I wanted to talk about this rising trend that I've been seeing because it's definitely relevant to this topic and also makes this paradox that I'm talking about a little bit more visible. And that is the surprising resurgence of exclusive social clubs amongst Gen Z. Now, on one hand, this is nice to see because we have been experiencing a loneliness epidemic and this is a way to meet new people. But on the other hand, these sorts of social clubs thrive on exclusivity. We're seeing that traditional member-only clubs like the Soho House are at an all-time high. And so this is on the Soho House and Co. Inc.com. Essentially, what they're showing is how much their group has been growing in 2024. And apparently their membership waitlist now sits at approximately 111,000, which is an all-time high. Our second quarter results reflect the strong appeal of Soho House globally, with Soho House members growing 16% year on year and our waitlist increasing to approximately 111,000. We opened Soho House, Sao Paulo with great feedback from members and have continued to see significant demand for our recent openings, including Mexico City and Portland. These positive membership trends have led us to raise our outlook for membership for the full year. And they just go through all of the ways that they are making money. And what we see is that this membership is not that cheap. If you want access to all the houses, you're looking at paying around $2,950. And that's if you're under 27. Now, if you're over 27, which I don't believe, I think Gen Z is right at 27. And you're looking at about $5,800 annually, or you could pay a quarterly cost of $1,450. And beyond these sorts of established institutions, we're also seeing a new wave of social clubs that are explicitly targeting young professionals. And this has emerged in a lot of these major cities. We have the Gathering Spot, which is in Atlanta. We have Lifetime, Zero Bond in New York, and the Filter Club in Philadelphia. And these represent just a few examples of this trend. And as we saw with the Soho House, membership often ranges from about $1,500 to $8,000 annually. And that's at the low end. Some of these spaces are far from accessible to the average Gen Z individual. But what makes this trend particularly surprising to me is how it contradicts the inclusive, sort of egalitarian values that Gen Z holds. These spaces are, by definition, exclusive, and they're designed to separate members from those who can afford access from those who cannot. The allure of member-only clubs in the US to millennials and Gen Z. These clubs are catering to everyone from CEOs to creatives who seek a blend of luxury, privacy, and a vibrant social scene. Memberships at these clubs also provide more than just a place to unwind. It's a gateway to a network of like-minded individuals and A-list events that enhance social and professional lives. I think the key word to me is A-list. The rise of member-only clubs' popularity also reflects changing values amongst millennials and Gen Z. Where once material wealth was the primary status symbol, today investing in experiences and wellness is the reason to join. For those who value privacy, luxury, and a sense of belonging, the modern members-only club is more than just a status symbol, it's a lifestyle choice. So they're sort of rebranding this idea of an exclusive members only club, trying to make it seem more about experiences and make it less about the privacy or the social status that comes with being in one of these clubs. But what it does show me is that in the end of the day, these sort of luxurious, exclusionary spaces are still alive and well, and if anything, making a big resurgence among Gen Z through this different type of marketing. We're also seeing that despite financial constraints, Gen Z is spending the most on luxury goods proportional to their income than previous generations. And I've talked about this in a previous video. According to a Bain & Company's 2023 luxury study, Gen Z will represent 40% of the luxury market by 2035. We're seeing that the resale market for designer goods is absolutely booming. And even fake luxuries like dupes and knockoffs is a massive trend amongst Gen Z. And of course, it's not only about luxury items, it's also about luxury experiences, exclusive restaurants, VIP festival packages. These have become important status markers for Gen Z. And this is a generation that is trying to reject traditional status hierarchies. We also see how Gen Z follows influencers and celebrities at higher rates than any other demographic. Like many, they enjoy analyzing their fashion, their relationships, their spending habits, literally anything that has to do with celebrities. And there's this fascination with the rich and famous. Psychologically, people admire those who have gotten rich by working hard. And according to a Pew Research study, 92% of Americans think like this. And we see that a lot of billionaires and celebrities have this sort of bootstrap story. It's very inspirational and it ends up creating a cult-like following. Last year, we saw that it was Chappell Roan. People saw her, grinding it out on her own and finally just make her break. And this makes Gen Z admire them and follow them and almost obsess over them. And according to the Digital Marketing Institute, 60% of Gen Z follows advice from influencers compared to 52% of millennials. And there's definitely a preference for content that shows this sort of aspirational, you can do it too kind of lifestyle. But don't be mistaken, because if a celebrity messes up, Gen Z is quick to cancel them. You can't be out of touch. Kylie Jenner's private jet, canceled. Kim Kardashian's just work harder speech, yeah, she got roasted. We even saw the whole celebrity blocking movement last year. So we see that Gen Z doesn't play when it comes to an out of touch celebrity. But honestly, at this stage, the movements and canceling don't quite last that long. It's hard for people to give up their obsessions. And what this reveals to me is that it's not the wealth these celebrities have that is hated, it's the wealth without accountability. It's the wealth that is blatant or even out of touch. So to understand this contradiction a little bit more, we have to examine the forces that are creating this sort of tension, both externally but also internally. I've noticed that for many in Gen Z, the pursuit of wealth isn't only about luxury. It's also about survival in an increasingly difficult economy. Housing is unaffordable. Student debt is averaging over $30,000 per graduate, and that's according to Federal Reserve data. Inflation is destroying any purchasing power that we once had, and financial security feels very out of reach. And so with this context, hustle culture isn't just about chasing wealth, it's also about adaptation and security. Capitalism has really shaped our desires in ways that we can't escape. I mean, from birth, we're taught that money equals freedom and that consumption is going to make you happy and that wealth is going to make you successful. This cultural programming around money and success is very similar to gravity. You can recognize its existence and you can still be bound by its laws. This programming definitely runs deep, and even if we try to reject these values, they're quite hard to escape. Intellectual critique doesn't necessarily translate to behavioral change, especially when the behaviors in question are rewarded socially and economically. So while change is slow, Gen Z is still trying to reform capitalism in a way that feels less exploitative to them. I've definitely seen a rise in talks of ethical consumption, and this is a practice of buying products that are made in ways that is socially and environmentally responsible. People are buying less, so they're taking part in low buys or even no buy years, and people are also finding ways to create businesses that are more ethical. And this can look like paying people living wages, creating in ways that don't exploit people, seeking collaboration over competition, or even just working shorter business hours. It's not anti-capitalism so much as it is a reformed version of capitalism, and that's just for the time being. It's an attempt at aligning these capitalistic forces with social and environmental values. Another reconciliation strategy that I'm seeing involves redefining what success and wealth actually means. And so I'm sure you've heard of it, these increasingly popular concepts like financial freedom and time affluence. That was a new one for me, but this is the feeling that you have enough time to do what you want and enjoy your life. And I find that to be important because in this capitalistic world, the reason why hustle culture even exists to the level that it does is because they want you to feel like you don't have time. There's not enough resources. There's just a lack. So being able to have the mindset that there is enough is definitely going to be valuable in the future. There's also wealth of experience. And this is the idea that the knowledge and wisdom that you've gained throughout life experiences is valuable, just like financial wealth is. And these ideas represent an attempt to decouple status from these sort of traditional wealth markers. This sort of reframing can hopefully allow people to have aspirations without becoming ethically compromised. And the goal would be that it becomes less about having everything and more about having enough of what matters to each individual. Found that Gen Z's struggle with wealth isn't just a contradiction for contradiction's sake. They're stuck between the world that they currently live in and the one that they want to create. It's a generation that's trying to escape a system while simultaneously still being trapped inside of it. But also, this tension might be the push that leads us to something new. Otherwise, I think we'll just keep running in circles, hating the rich while desperately trying to join them. What do you guys think? Is it possible to be financially secure without compromising your values? If you made it this far in the video, please post a book emoji because that's what I'm feeling. Thank you so much for watching today's video. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe, and I will see you guys in the next deep dive.